Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Empowered Podcast. I'm glad you are here today. I have an awesome guest that I am excited to share with you. Finally, after months of our paths crossing and our messages just really gelling together and being very complementary, I'm happy to share with you Kary Oberbrunner, who is the author of Day Job to Dream Job. And he's here with me today. How are you doing, Kary?
Hey, I'm doing great, Ellery. Thanks.
I'm really glad you're here. Like I just mentioned, we know so many of the same people. Many of them have said, hey, you've got to have Kary on the show. Some of those same people are in your training program or in your coaching program. And I'm glad I'm finally able to have you on the show.
Yeah, I've heard so many good things about you, Ellery, and
You're being too nice.
no, man. It's great. Yeah, it's cool. Like a lot of world changers, they want to hang together. So congrats on all you're doing.
Well, thank you, and you're so right. And it's, I was just speaking at Podcast South Florida, and I was talking about the community of podcasters and the community surrounding this medium. And to your point, podcasters and people who are wanting to make an impact on the world, they do seem to cluster a little bit. We need to get out of our offices and away from the microphone some. But you're right. People who do have goals and are mission oriented do tend to stick together.
Definitely.
So I had a question for you. Now, I want us to talk some about your book, but I want to talk specifically about why you are so passionate about this. So I'm going to let go of the reins here for a second. I want you to talk about the Day Job to Dream Job book. I want you to tell us about this fantastic, what would you call it, a teaser that you did at a certain famous prison?
Yeah.
Would you call it a teaser?
Yeah. I mean, some people call it a book trailer, but yeah, I mean, it's a clip from the Shawshank Redemption where we went there, and I never knew that I lived 90 minutes from the prison because I didn't grow up in Ohio. And one night I was watching Shawshank Redemption, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this totally is bigger than a movie about prison. In fact, it reflects the way I feel right now. I was stuck in my day job, and just like Andy was in prison and he wanted to get out, you can't just break out overnight and, jump over the barbed wire. You really need to go from prison to plan to payoff. And that's exactly what Andy did. Andy felt his desire to get out, but he got really serious about breaking free, and he used a plan. He had people around him. You talk about like-minded people. That's how we started the podcast today. But he got people around him that were part of his team, Morgan Freeman and others, who plays Red, in the movie, and basically he breaks free over a period of time. And Ellery, that's exactly what I did. I knew that even though good things were happening at my day job, it wasn't my ultimate calling. And
Yeah.
and so I broke free.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it there, and I talk to a lot of people, Kary, and I'm sure you do too, going through your coaching and your speaking, that people would love. And I, to be perfectly honest, I think I would love for it too, to be a light switch. You go from your day job to a successful podcast business or blog or being a successful author. But you said something that's very important. I usually refer to it as an on-ramp or a runway, but you're talking about the plan, and it is a transition. Did you consciously do you consciously focus on that plan, that transition period, or when you first started out, was it a longer transition than you had hoped?
So it's interesting, Ellery. I kind of faced life. I'll just be honest. There's two ways of facing life. One is a victim, and the other is a victor. Victims look at life as life happening to them. Okay, so they use words like, it's not what you know, it's who you know. You got to be at the right place at the right time. They're all about luck and chance.
But do you think do you totally discount that, because I've used those, but I also believe that we're the masters of our own destiny too.
Oh
So
yeah.
can you
Yeah.
can you have both?
So I'll tell you what, you can be at the right place at the right time and not even know it. Meaning that if you're unaware, like think about it. Looking back, haven't you been at certain places where you're like, oh my gosh, if I would have known what I know now, I could have totally used that conference. I could have used that meeting to my advantage, but I wasn't aware. So in other words, it's not just being at the right place at the right time. You need to be aware and you need to be focused. And so yeah, I do believe that opportunities do exist, but I believe that unless you're aware, you won't take advantage of those.
I like the quote, and you've probably heard this too, Kary, is the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Mm,
And I don't remember who said that, but
totally true. Totally
it
true.
is.
And a related one that says, it only has taken me 10 years to become an overnight success, right? In
Yeah.
other words, kind of like that. I mean, Ellery, I published my first book with Relevant Books 10 years ago. And so
Wow.
you think, wow, he probably just shot out of the gate. Not at all, man. I had book and then I'm waiting for like the big break, nothing. Second book, waiting for the big break, nothing. Third book, fourth book. Finally, man, like I wake up and I'm like, okay, this is not going to happen to me. I need to go out and
Mm.
make this happen. And so that's when I kind of shifted gears. You mentioned, did it just happen? I'll tell you what happened, Ellery. I got called into my director's office uh, several years ago, and he said, look, we want you to be the next leader of the organization. So we're going to promote you and we're going to announce this to the organization. But here's the catch. You won't take over the new position for 10 years. And so,
What?
and so they're like, basically, let's announce you as leader, as successor, but you got to wait for 10 years. And when they told me this, I was 33, okay? I'm 37 now. And I'll tell you what, that was the aha moment where I said, oh my gosh, I need to turn down this promotion. But if I do, they might fire me. And if they fire me,
Yeah.
what do I have? I have nothing to fall back on. And so I did not take the promotion. I wanted to be ethical. I wanted to be like straight up and not say that I was going to take something and then go out the back door. So I said, no, I don't think that promotion is for me. But if you let me stay on and serve, I'll give it my best. But I will begin to plan an exit strategy. And they're like,
Mm.
absolutely. If you can serve here with your full heart, we understand that you're going to begin a plan. And so I'll tell you what, man, the clock began ticking. I got so serious, and like every free moment, I began to invest in myself and study from people like you and others that had success. And as a result, within a 2-year period, man, I went from like thinking I have nothing to offer the world, which was totally true. I'm not being humble. I was like, I thought, because I got my master's and doctorate, but I mean, it's in a very niche topic.
Hmm.
And so you can't just like leave that and get compensated. So I got super serious, and God just kind of opened up the paths and I got connected. Yes, I did get connected to some good people, but it was the plan that really began to make it happen as well.
What you said really resonates with me, Kary, and hopefully somebody out there is listening to this and they can relate to your story and the one that I want to share here, because I was in a very large corporate company just about a year ago before I became full time doing what I'm doing now. And so many people are like, man, someday I'll be to the director level. And the company that I was in, Fortune 50 company, 100,000 employees, but I was only like 8 from the top. It was
Wow.
not a whole lot of middle people.
Totally.
It's not saying a whole lot for me, but It's just,
Totally.
it's only like 8 from the top. But the idea was, in 4 or 5 years I can get an advancement. 4 or 5 years I can get promoted to this. 4 or 5. All of a sudden you're talking about 20 years of your life. You're gonna be 60 freaking years
Yeah.
old, and you're still gonna just be director level, and you're being working 90 hours a
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
And that was a situation for the friends of mine that were managers. Like, you got to be this for 10 years before you can go to the next level, and then it's like trying to put a wet cat in a bag or something, trying to scramble to get this promotion.
Totally.
All that, so you can pour your heart and soul into a company that can get rid of you at the drop of a hat.
Exactly.
And you can hear my passion for this, Kary, and why I'm so why I love the title of your book, Day Job to Dream Job, and why I'm so passionate about helping people get the tools that they need to start something for themselves. But let me ask you, what makes you so passionate about this? You've written several books, like you just mentioned. You're doing this coaching training. You've spent a lot of time and money and effort and energy sharing this message to help people leave the day job and start their dream job. Was there like an inciting event? Was there a firing or a layoff, or was it what you just told me about, that you really like, holy crap, that's 10 years of limbo?
Well, I'll tell you what, why not? I'll just shock everybody. So, Ellery, I mean, my story is one that is pretty intense. I mean, I was a kid that was pretty successful, but I had a secret, story. And my story was that I I was not happy with myself. I was actually very disappointed with myself, and I turned all that frustration and anger inward, and I got caught up in an addiction of self-injury. So I was like this guy who like would not tell anybody, but I literally would make it through life through cutting. And that
Mm.
like freaks out some people until they realize this. You know what? I might have used a literal blade, and again, this was about 15 years ago, okay? Like young adult, trying to make my way, that type of thing. But everybody I coach, everybody without exception is a self-injurer when it comes to their potential. You see what I'm saying? They don't use a
Wow.
blade.
Yeah.
They don't use a blade, but they self-sabotage all the time. So it's like I might have done a literal self-injury, but everyone I meet is a metaphorical self-injurer. And here's where it often kind of uh, manifests itself in self-limiting beliefs, right?
Mm.
And through all my research, through all my study, it always comes down to two self-limiting beliefs that people have. They always come to these core lies. One is, I am not enough, right? So you can fill in the blank. I am not enough. I'm not enough good looking.
Tall
Yeah,
enough
yeah,
or
tall,
smart enough?
exactly.
Okay.
And then the other one is, I don't have enough, and that
Mm.
deals with resources. And so these two lies literally suck people's life away. And isn't it true that those two lies even come out with not going to their dream job, right? Because people say, well, I'm not enough. I don't have enough. I don't have enough networks, money, resources, talent, you name it. And so what we need to do, Ellery, is just like Andy, in Shawshank, he didn't become institutionalized. All of his other friends, all of his other prisoners, they began to accept the life inside the prison, that this is it. And Morgan Freeman has this crazy line. He says, these walls are funny. First you hate them, and then you begin to get comfortable, and then you love them, and then you can't live without them. And
Mm.
that's like, you just laid out this path back in your former corporate life. Imagine if you're a 45-year-old and you're on that ladder and that path. There's no way you're going to leave at 45, because you've already invested so much that you're like, I'm not going to start over again. And so those walls become safety for you, and they hold you back.
Yeah, I'm literally getting chills right now. It went from being 100 degrees in my office to being like 50, because just your story, Kary, and thank you for opening up and sharing that. But I think you're exactly right. Whether it's eating or or overeating, I guess I should say, or
Sure.
or sitting down and doing a video game marathon. I'm pointing at myself
Yeah.
there instead of doing what you need to do. And then, like you said, when you're 45 years old, it becomes you get used to the pain.
Exactly.
And there's a story, I think I might have shared it on my podcast before, but there's two. I know I did because I butchered it and edited it, or didn't edit it out and shared it anyway. But there's two old guys, Kary. They're sitting on the front porch and they're rocking chairs,
Okay.
and the owner of the house is sitting there, and his dog's next to him, and the dog's just kind of whimpering. And the other guy says, why's your dog whimpering? What's he whining about? And he says, well, he's laying on a nail.
Mm,
And the other guy says, well, why didn't he just get up? He's like, well, he's not that uncomfortable yet,
mm,
or it doesn't hurt that bad.
mm.
And that's the 45-year-old, 55 or 65-year-old person, or 35 or 25
Yep.
for that matter, who says, I I don't like this, but it's the devil I know.
Yep.
I told myself that for 2 years. I don't know that I've even shared that with anyone other than my wife, but
Mm.
it was the devil that I knew.
Yep.
I was not happy there. I knew I wasn't seeing the type of growth. I don't even want to say that I deserve, because I think I'm coming to hate the word deserve, but the recognition that I felt I should be getting.
Yep.
But it was like, well, if I go to another job, I I'll just stay over here.
Exactly.
I've got my good years, my bad. I got the commissions,
Sure.
and I think so many people are in that. Well, I know. I know so many people, and like you talked about in your book, I was looking through the info that you sent me, and you're talking about how like 70 or 80% of people have like stress related
Yes. Illnesses.
work things,
Yeah.
and I was talking to I did a podcast with my friend Nick Loper. It was about successful people.
Mm.
And one of the things we talked about was like 70%, probably similar to your 70% of people are not engaged at work.
Yes.
A-
Yep. The Gallup poll.
80%
Yep.
are, yeah, it's the same thing. Roughly 70, 75, was it are disengaged, another are like actively disengaged, like actively doing something else. And then something like 94%, and I could be off, 94% of people didn't like what they did.
Yep. Yep.
And that's terrible news. But maybe somebody out there will hear that. They'll read your book. They'll maybe listen to more podcasts where we talk about things like this. But it doesn't have to be that way, right?
It doesn't. And in fact, we can talk, and we should, about all the reasons to leave and this type of thing. But here's the other thing, Ellery. I'm sure you can agree with this. Um, there's so many benefits to leave. Like, in other words, we always think about what we're giving up, right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm giving up health insurance, I'm giving up titles and salary and security. But what are you gaining? You know? And the three things that I talk about that people gain are freedom, finances, and fulfillment. It is so cool to wake up and to realize that, you know what, today my kids and my wife and I, we can just go, like
Yeah.
I can work when I want because now I'm my own boss. And look, I'm not saying everyone has to go solopreneur or something like that for their dream job, but what I am saying is that there's a mindset shift. And most people who have a day job have the mindset of crap, I gotta look busy, I gotta look like I'm doing something. And think about that. Think about how crazy that thought is. That is so, like, if you're a successful person who wants total alignment and you want to reach your potential, to say, I have to look busy, that's like counting your time. You know what I'm saying? I mean, somebody give you a bullet, right? Because that's like saying, I'm going to live an inauthentic life to basically be given a paycheck. And too many years of that, and it begins to erode your soul. And I know it.
I was talking to a friend of mine. I don't know if you guys know each other. Do you know Donald Kelly?
No.
He's the sales evangelist, the sales evangelist.
Okay.
He'll laugh. But he's got a podcast. Anyway, he and I were having dinner. His wife were there in Miami a couple weeks ago,
Awesome.
and we were talking about finance. It was hot, dude. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. um, and we were talking about how much money it takes to actually make a successful transition to your job. And I was telling him, like I was just throwing out numbers, making something up. I was like, but let's say you're making 50, 60, $80,000 a year, and you think to get my dream job, I have to replace that income. And I said, guys, that's not exactly true. Think if you had maybe just $25 or $2,500 a month, all of a sudden you wouldn't have to be saving for this extravagant escape vacation because you hate your day job. Because like you just said, you wake up and you have a purpose. You wake up and you have a smile on your face. And I used to get sick, Kary, when I used to work from home a couple days a week, and my stomach would be in knots when I logged into my computer.
Oh yeah.
It was awful. And you don't have that. We were talking about going on a vacation here in the fall. My wife and I are like, I'm not, and she loves her job, which again, most people don't. She loves her job, but we're not necessarily looking at this total expensive escape weekend. Definitely. Because we're so miserable here. And when you are making that transition, if you're listening to this, you don't have to replace 100% of your income because of those things. And what you had said there about picking up your wife and kids and traveling and doing what you wanted was inspiring to me. So
yeah, no. Most people say that I'm gonna trade 5 for 2. Their entire life is trade 5 for 2, and 5 days of torture, pain, chronic pain, whatever, for 2 days of bliss or something like that. And the reality is, come on, dude, like 2 days of bliss.
And we know it's not full 2 days.
Exactly.
About like 11 o'clock on Sunday, you're like, crap, I gotta go back to work.
And check it out, Ellery. The highest suicide rate, the highest suicide time of the week is Sunday nights for men.
Oh man.
Sunday nights for men. And that is just so relevant that, look, we say it doesn't affect us, but it totally affects us. And Ellery, do you have kids, by the way?
We do not know.
Okay.
I say no, and my wife says not yet.
All right.
Funny.
All right. Well, any of your listeners who have kids, you asked me what was really big. This was a big quote. It's not that popular, but Carl Jung, a dead Swiss psychiatrist, in all of his research, he looked and he found out what was the most damaging thing in the life of a child. Okay. So he did all kinds of test research. I thought it was like alcoholism or abuse or abandonment. It was the unlived life of the parent.
Oh, wow.
And what does that mean? That means the parent who comes home and for 18 years of the kid's life, they see acting out every day, dysfunction, disengagement. You talked about those words. Think about it, Ellery. People grab the remote and they say, don't bother me, kids. I just need to veg out. Veg is short for vegetable, and a vegetable is someone who is brain dead. So the parent's saying, don't interact with me, kids. I want to go brain dead so I can make it through the next day. And Ellery, I'll tell you what, now on the other side, now having broken free, it is unbelievable every day to wake up. I'm not saying like walk on air or anything like that, but I'm saying every day to wake up knowing that I have a purpose. I don't have any barriers. My barriers are myself. That's it. I don't have these external barriers that create all this sideways energy that many day jobs do. Now it's just like, okay, how are we going to change the world? And I have a small team, and that's every day what we ask ourselves, and it is awesome.
Yeah, that's incredible. I look forward to where I'm making enough money by impacting enough lives to where we can just pick up and try. We're kind of rooted here and things like that. But Kary, talk about your book for a second. I know we've been referring to it and mentioning things, and I love the conversation that we have had. But by the way, I want to tell you again, when I was in Miami, I went and met with the executive vice president of the John Maxwell team by a guy. His name's Scott Fay.
Oh yeah.
You know Scott?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I walked into his office and your book was sitting on his desk.
Wow, which one was that?
The Day Job to Dream
Oh
Job.
yeah, definitely. Scott's cool, man. We've worked together on some projects, and I have tons of respect for him.
He is a great guy. But tell me about your book. What do you teach us through through these words?
Yeah,
How will we be different on the other end? Because I want to know. I want to talk about your book specifically, and I want you to share this inspiration with everybody who's listening.
totally. So the book is totally not hype. You know, I knew that if people read this book and get fired up, they might actually leave their day job. And if they do, they might have kids to support, spouses to support. And so the last thing I was going to do was get everyone fired up and then not give them tools. So this
Mm.
book is not about hype, it's about hope. And what do I mean by that? It is literally a how to. It is 9 steps that every single person needs to create their dream job, regardless of what industry. It's the 9 steps I used, and now I actually teach these 9 steps in my dream job boot camp. People from all over the world are enrolled in it. It is awesome, and we basically craft a dream jobber plan, because that's what I tell people. I'm not look, I don't want to die and have people say, "Look, you inspired me to be reckless or jump off a cliff." That not on my watch. What I actually do is I get people fired up in the beginning of the book. That's about the prison. So I got a large section about the prison and what this is actually doing to you, and how Andy was stuck and how most of us are stuck. Then I spend a big chunk of the book on the plan. And the plan is that you need a story, you need a service, you need a space, you need a platform, promotion, products, and you need a community, credibility, and clarity. And I give you exactly how to do it, tailored to your specific situation. And then the last part of the book is the payoff, because that's what Andy was doing. Andy wasn't just escaping Shawshank. He had a place in mind. It was called Zihuatanejo. It was a Mexican town, and he was going to do charter fishing. And I really push people to say, look, you can't just try to run from something. You need to run to something. And then we
Mm.
really identify what that is, because it is going to get tough. And when it gets tough, they need to know what they're running to.
I wanted to ask you about your steps, but I feel like a lesson from my past fits really good here. I had two coworkers back at my corporate company, Kary, and they were both applying for the same job.
Wow.
And one of them got it, the other one not even close. And I kind of got some inside information from one of the hiring managers, and he said one candidate was trying to escape their current job,
Mm,
and the one who got it was wanting to get into that new role.
I love it.
And their mentalities, their mannerisms, their subconscious behaviors are what impacted that interview. And I think it's so important. It's not just I want to work for myself, I want to get away from this job, but to have that goal, to have something pulling you instead of trying to leave something behind,
Yes.
just increases the impact in the clarity that you can have every time you wake up or stay up late to pursue this dream. So I'm so glad you talk about those. And your what was the town?
Zihuatanejo. It's a yeah. I had to like. Oh my gosh, I had to
Okay.
like pronounce that because I knew I would be doing sweet interviews like on your podcast, and yeah, like so. I hope I'm saying it right. But
Well,
in the movie, it was on the Pacific Ocean, and Andy wanted to go there because the Pacific Ocean has no memory. And so he
mm,
wanted to get to a place where he had escaped the pain, but also created a new life. And the cool thing is, because I know we're almost out of time, but the cool thing is that Morgan Freeman, who had no dream, saw his friend chase his dream and got inspired. And that's the other thing, Ellery, we didn't have time to talk
mm.
about. But you breaking free is actually inspiring a whole tribe who's watching you, and they
I
need
hope
hope
so.
too. They need hope.
I hope so. Kary, and thank you for spending this time with me. I'm excited to check out your book. I'm so glad our paths crossed. Do you happen to be coming to Podcast Movement? I don't think you're a podcaster, but are you coming to Dallas next month?
Jared, our friend, is like telling me I need to. I might just say, what the heck, let's do it. So
Yeah,
who knows?
just do. Well, hopefully, I think this may release after that, but hopefully I get to see you, and I look forward to meeting you in person. Thanks, Kary, so much for being on the Empowered Podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Ellery.
Oh, man, I have been excited to share that interview with you guys ever since 5 seconds after Kary and I got off of our Skype call. Even when my wife Ashley was taking a look at it and doing the editing last night, she's like, Ellery, I haven't heard you be so passionate on an interview in a very long time. And honestly, I think that she's probably right about that. Just leaving a day job and pursuing a dream job is really at the heart of what I write about and try to talk about on the podcast. It doesn't always come through. I don't always achieve my mission, and I know I need to clarify things. I know that's just one thing that I took away from Podcast Movement. I just got back a couple days ago, and it's fresh on my mind. But I was extremely passionate, and I really am enjoying listening to Kary's chat with me today, and even going through his book. And you can find a link to his book and his training course in empoweredpodcast.com/48. That's the link that'll take you to the show notes and the resources and everything like that. Before we go, I wanted to mention just a couple things to you. If you have purchased my #1 best-selling book on podcasting called How to Start Your Professional Podcast for $200 or Less, I just added a new resource to the bonuses page. In that book, you go and you find the link, and it takes you to a page on my site, and you get to see all of the tutorials and the videos and the bonuses and all of the tools that I use. Well, I just added a new one. And if I sound any different to you today, it's because, well, it ties into one of those bonuses. Right now, and for all of you non-podcasters, it's going to get technical for about 3 seconds. I'm using right now the Audio-Technica ATR 2100, and I normally use the Blue Yeti. Both microphones are generally under $100, and I talk about each of these microphones. I don't have to say those anymore. I have them both on my desk right now. But I'm just using the other one, and I give you a audio test in that book. So if you are looking to start your podcast, if you are looking to share your message with the world, now you have a direct comparison with me using both of those microphones. So check out the book and the link. If you haven't gotten the book yet, check out ElleryWells.com/podcast200. That should be fairly easy to remember. Podcast 200, start a professional podcast for $200 or less. The book's $8. It'll show you exactly how you can share your message with the world. And I know we're not supposed to give all these calls to action and all these things to do at the end of the podcast, but I do want to mention one more thing. And two more things. I am launching the 3rd round of my training course. Go to empoweredpodcast.com/expertise. If you're on a treadmill right now, all of the resources, again, are all at empoweredpodcast.com, and you don't have to really remember anything. Just remember empoweredpodcast.com. I'm starting my next training course, and I want you to be a part of it. If this message today, in the episode today, has resonated with you, and you realize that putting all of your eggs in one basket is something you don't want to do anymore, start taking action today. Start doing something about it today so that you can escape this prison that is your day job. If you feel that way, you might not, but if you feel that way, start doing something about it. And my expertise course will show you exactly the tools that I use day in and day out to make it happen. And that leads me to the final thing that I want to share with you today. And it's kind of been bugging me for the last several months. And I don't want to say that I have lied and I haven't lied. I try not to lie, but I haven't been completely transparent about how everything went down at the transition of my day job to my dream job. And coming up, we're coming up pretty close on my 50th episode, and I felt fairly convicted at Podcast Movement, and I want to share more of my story. And I am going to have Ashley, again, my wife, interview me on the podcast. And to be perfectly honest, I'm kind of scared to do it a little bit. I'm worried about sharing my part of the story, and it's going to be interesting, So if you have any questions for me about the process, about the mindset, about any aspect of that, send me an email and I'll have Ashley ask me those questions. Shoot me an email. You can leave it in the comments section below. My contact information is everywhere at empoweredpodcast.com. But shoot me an email, Ellery@ElleryWells.com. Just put 50th episode or something in the subject line, and I will try to answer those questions as openly and as honestly as possible. And it's a kind of a fear for me to be this open and honest about something in front of everybody. And so I hopefully I'll still have your support afterward. And anyway, I'm just kind of I'm trying to think of these weird questions and fears getting in the way. And I struggle with that just like you probably do as well. Find all of this at empoweredpodcast.com. Shoot me an email. Let me know what kind of questions you might have for me. If you bought the book, check out my review of the 2 microphones that I use pretty heavily. And if you are interested in figuring out or learning about all of the tools necessary, and there's not a lot, but how to make your entrepreneur journey a success, that's also at empoweredpodcast.com and my expertise course there. And we'll see you next week. I'm just kind of here at a loss for words. I'm being fairly transparent here, and I don't want to just ramble, but we all have fears, guys. We all have fears about things that we know we should do, or that we are about to do, or things just coming at us so fast. This world moves fast, and just don't be afraid to share those. And I want to encourage you to face your fears this week. Do something awesome. Connect with me in some way. I can't wait to hear from you. And a big thank you to my friend Shane Whaley, who left me an awesome review. I met him at Podcast Movement. And Shane, if you're out there listening to this, thank you for your support. Thank you for coming up and saying hello, and I really appreciate it. We'll see you next week, guys. Man, don't you just love that music? Ever since I heard it the first time, I have loved that song. I hope you like it too. We'll see you next week. Keep smiling, Matt Lovell.